Hi, Cora Stack here again, Dr. Stack. I haven't often moved since I've been the usual working 9 to 5. So in the morning. So starting. So this is not justice; it's a system of traps. So when Mr. Enoch Burke spoke about his release from prison, he said something that stayed with me. He said Justice Brian Cregan had done a U-turn, and his words put him in a trap. And that phrase sort of shook me, not because of the allegation itself, but because of how familiar it sounded. Because just recently, a litigant in person, that I know is regularly in the Dublin courts, told me this is exactly how he learned to survive in court. You have to set more traps for the opposition than they set for you. So it's like a game of traps. This is what he was saying. Think about that. It's the only way to survive, let alone succeed in our courts, is by laying traps. In other words, by outmanoeuvring rather than being heard. What kind of a justice system is this? Because this is not justice, it's a chessboard, a win or lose, black or white system, where technical moves matter more than truth, and where outcomes depend less on substance than on who understands the game. It's an outdated game. It's Victorian in design, adversarial by instinct, and completely at odds with what a humane, accessible justice system in a modern democracy should look like. An ordinary person should not lose their case or their freedom because they don't understand a procedural trap or couldn't afford expert legal representation who do. Yet this is exactly what happens every single day. But there was something else that Mr. Burke said that, that stood out even more. And I mean, it said a lot about his character. He said there was a lot of very sad cases in Mountjoy prison. It did say a lot about his character. That he recognised, all the sadness in prisons. A lot of sad cases. And I'm a great fan of the great poem, The Ballad of Reading Jail by wonderful Mr. Oscar Wilde, and it's exactly that. He writes like that about all the sad cases, and about the Victorian system of punishment. And is it any different? It's no different. I mean, all these years, and we still can't come up with a better justice system. We're still living centuries behind in terms of our vision of justice, in my opinion. And you can see that from from these prisons full of sad cases. And that raises a question we should all be asking. Is prison really the right place for sad cases? Because sadness is not criminality. Vulnerability is not defiance. And unresolved conflict is not something incarceration can fix. In our prisons, if our prisons are filled with people whose stories are defined more by sadness than danger, then the failure is not individual, it's systemic. Prisons cannot heal trauma. It cannot repair relationships. It cannot resolve institutional conflict or human understanding. Yet our justice system keeps defaulting to punishment, not because it works, because it lacks the imagination, it lacks the courage and structures to do anything else. What we are left with is a system that rewards traps over truth, delivers punishment instead of resolution, generates enormous legal fees, and causes profound social harm. Many within the legal profession are now state funded, yet the system remains deeply conflicted and inaccessible for the majority. Governments too dependent on that profession appear unwilling or unable to step back and ask whether any of this is working in the public interest. That's for the squeeze middle and everybody else. And is it the right version of justice when you see, just examine the Burke case in particular, just as a case? Justice should not be about winning or losing. It should not be about humiliation or escalation. Justice should be about repairing harm where possible, not multiplying it exponentially. Until we rethink what justice is for and who it is meant to serve, what we will continue to see in our courts and prisons is not justice at all, but ritualized conflict, human damage, and a system that mistakes punishment for resolution. And that is something a modern democracy should no longer accept. So that's the sort of thoughts I had about when that video that the video when he's talking about he's like the Oscar Wilde, if you like. It's very interesting if you compare Enoch Burke to Oscar Wilde, isn't it? The Reading jail and the Mountjoy prison. I think there's a striking comparison between the Oscar Wilde and the Ballad of Reading Jail, and maybe what the words of Mr. Enoch Burks was the Burks were very, very articulate, very, very intelligent people, but the whole thing is outrageous. So, I mean, I feel the court, the whole conflict resolution system he used here, using the courts, has failed abysmally, and it has caused enormous harm, societal harm, personal harm, trauma to all concerned, and it hasn't worked. It has failed, and so I hope whenever Mr. Burke or the school go back to court, they won't be allowed to go into the court again. That's what I hope. I hope they won't be allowed. That the school will not be allowed to escalate the conflict into the court, and that the school will be made go for arbitration. That's what I would hope would happen. That their application would for further imprisonment. They have the money and the resources, and the state are paying for that. That they would be forced into, not forced, but encouraged into an arbitration system, and a sit-down system for a number of months pending the next application into the court. That's the way I would do it if I was Justice Cregan, I would say, or somebody who was advising them. I would say no more of this nonsense. Now, anyone if the school come back for more imprisonment, no. The advice is, because if you're in a commercial dispute in the Supreme Court, I believe the Supreme Court will encourage mediation in a commercial dispute.